University of Missouri, then went on to study art history at the University of Louisiana. She specializes in medieval history. Sylvia has lectured for multiple universities and has taught high school Japanese for 11 years in Kentucky. She has concentrated her historical work on the early Christian era and Middle Ages. Welcome, Mrs. Sneider.
To be here. I am thrilled to death that all of you are interested in history, and we are now colleagues. You have demonstrated by your discipline and your interest in things historical that you are willing to make the sacrifices that would permit you to join this honor society. So congratulations. As Amelia said, I am an art historian, and when I talked to Michelle about that, I said, well, can I talk about art? And she said, no, you can talk about art. And I said, well, okay. I said, I know, the Battle of Hastings took place on October 14th, so it would be topical if I could talk about the Battle of Hastings. Well, she said, that would be great. She said, you have about 15 minutes. And then she said, and don't be boring. So I thought to myself, well, I don't think I could even lay the groundwork in 15 minutes, so I need to come up with something else. And then I remembered that there is a historical initiative that is ongoing, that is taking place among all of the museums that are associated in the American Association of Museums, about 3,000 museums. So this is a little bit about art, but it's actually cross-disciplinary. And I hope that it will inspire you to understand that history is not a dead thing. History is a living thing, it's creative, and it spans a number of different disciplines. So the topic that I am going to be talking to you about is something called the Nazi-era Provenance Project. And I'm going to need to define a few terms. The provenance of an artwork or an artifact or even a document is its history of ownership. And all art is, historians that deal with art are always looking at the history of its ownership, not only to understand the context of how the art was created, but also to trace its historical significance through different owners, hopefully all the way back to the artist. And that also helps us decide whether a piece of art or an artifact is legitimate. So that is what provenance is. It's the history of ownership. The other thing I need to discuss with you or define for you is the Nazi era. We know that Hitler, who incidentally, did you know his real name was Schicklgruber? Did you know that? I think you can see why he changed it. I can't exactly see anybody saying Heil Schicklgruber. So anyway, from the moment that Adolf Hitler took the chancellorship of Germany, which was in January of 1933, that is the date that inaugurates the Nazi era. And it continues from 1933 all the way up to the advent of the war, World War II, and then to the end of World War II and the suicide of Hitler. So we define the Nazi era as 1933 to 1945. One other term I need to discuss with you, and that is the concept of money laundering. Do any of you know what money laundering is? Can you tell? Yeah, go ahead.
It's like when you hide illegal money under legal money, but
That's exactly right. In other words, you take dirty money you've gotten illegally, and you circulate it in such a way, or you invest it in such a way, that it cleans it up and it can no longer be traced. Well, what I'm going to tell you is a story of money laundering, because what Hitler needed to do after he came to power was he needed to build up his armaments under the guise of industrialization, the reindustrialization of Germany, and he was restricted by the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. So he had to do it secretly. So he was using almost any method that he could in order to raise money and to put it into arms. The other thing that he had to do was he had to consolidate his power. And this meant getting rid of all dissidents, not just people who were Jews, but also gypsies, the mentally defective, anybody who was against the regime. So he did that right from the very beginning. Right from the very beginning. So here was kind of like what the scenario was. Say you had some artwork. Say you had a nice little Dürer that had been passed down to you in your family, an Albert Dürer. Or say that you had, this was in the 30s, you had had an opportunity to get in on the ground floor of some of the so-called decadent art, what Hitler called the decadent art, Picasso's, Chagall's. Maybe you had a nice little Picasso. One night, there's a knock on the door, and you open your door, and a stormtrooper is standing there, member of the Gestapo, and he says, "Pack a lunch, you've got a train to catch." And there's nothing you can do about it. And after he's packed you off, he goes through your house, and he says, this little Picasso will do nicely, or this little Dürer will do nicely. We can make some money off this. So they confiscated the art. Now, this is not the same as the looting of art that Hitler did during the war. We all know that they looted art en masse during the war. They took huge private collections, museums, everything. This was just confiscating art from small collectors, small people. So then what they had to do was, this art no longer has any provenance attached to it. So they had to manufacture a provenance. They had to make up a new provenance for it. And they did that by using collaborating dealers who would circulate the art through the auctions circle. And eventually it would get a new provenance, a fake one, and would be cleaned up. Would no longer have that stigma of confiscated art attached to it. During this period, some of this art that had been confiscated from people who were in Germany ended up in the permanent collections of our museums. Either it was donated to them or they bought it from dealers in Europe. And in 1995, it became clear that individuals who were attempting to get back their property, either the survivors of the Holocaust or the heirs of the survivors of the Holocaust, had no way to do this. So it was decided by the American Association of Museums that they would examine very carefully the provenances of all the art that entered into their collections in the Nazi era, period of 1933 to 1945. And they have been doing that. And every so often, a piece of art is repatriated, given back to its original owner, or the museum negotiates with the heirs in a manner to keep the art through a monetary payment. So what I'd like to read to you is just one of these press releases, and it was put out by the Boston Museum of Art. Museum of Fine Arts. And it's a portrait of a man and a woman in an interior by Eglon van der Neer. And I have a picture, I don't know if you can see it too well, of the painting. It's a nice little 17th century Dutch painting of a couple, married couple. In June 2011, the Museum of Fine Arts reached a financial settlement with the heirs in the estate of Walter Westveld for Eglon van der Neer's portrait of a man and a woman in an interior, allowing the painting to remain at the museum. Walter Westveld, born 1889, died after 1942, operated an art gallery in Wuppertal, Germany, during the Nazi period. A 1935 decree from the Reichschamber of Fine Arts forbade him from working as a dealer because he was Jewish, and he was ordered to close the gallery in May of 1936. That very month, an exhibition of works of art owned by Westveld was held at the Galerie Kloiker in the nearby city of Düsseldorf, including a, quote, company scene by Eglon van der Neer. So you see they changed the name of it. This was almost certainly the MFA painting. The paper trail ends again 5 years later. So here is the provenance being reworked. The MFA purchased the painting from E&A Silberman Galleries in New York in December of 1941. Silberman probably acquired the painting in the spring of that year, but it has not been ascertained from who. It is not known for certain how the MFA's portrait of a man and a woman in an interior left Westveld's possession and made its way to the United States. Without further documentation, its exact provenance may never be known. However, it is difficult to imagine a scenario by which he sold the painting voluntarily in Nazi Germany, receiving proceeds over which he had free disposal. In November of 1938, Walter Westveld was arrested for violating Germany's foreign exchange laws, a trumped-up charge, no doubt. He spent the remaining years of his life in captivity, and on January 23rd, 1943, was sent to his death at Auschwitz. So, here you see history in the making. The curator who ascertained that this painting was indeed Walter Westveld's had to go through many, many different types of historical sources. She had to look at the archives of the newspaper to find out when the Kloiker Gallery held their show. She had to look through the different types of things that were with the Silberman Galleries, the different records that the Silberman Galleries had. But the most important part of this is that this is a continuing initiative. This is history. If it cannot be rectified, this is giving back something. So you do know that history is alive and creative. It is about people. We sometimes fall into the mistake of thinking that it's about events. It is not about events. It is about people. It is what people do that interests us. So I hope this will inspire you, that this is a continuing initiative, and that it will inspire you to understand that what you do is important. Your historical studies are important. So now there are two little things I want to add, and then I will sit down again and enjoy watching you receive the honor that you deserve and that you have richly earned. The first thing is cherish and trust in the love of your parents. Listen to their stories. Listen to your grandparents' stories. They are your first, best, and most accessible source for contemporary history and near contemporary history. Trust in their love for you. Nobody ever will be as heavily invested in your hopes and dreams as they are. And the second thing I have to tell you, and if you don't remember anything else that I said tonight, please remember this. I used to tell every one of my students, every time they left my class on Friday, this was always the last thing they heard from me. So much so that when I retired, They stood up en masse and they said it back to me. And this is it. Nothing good ever happens after midnight. Stay safe. Do not break your family's hearts. Continue to study. Continue to be dedicated scholars. I congratulate you, and I am thrilled to be here. Thank you.
All right. Did you remember our oath? All right, if you could all stand, please. All the numbers, sorry, okay. If you could raise your right hand and repeat after me. All right. I pledge myself to uphold.
I pledge myself to uphold
the high purposes of the History Honor Society.
the high purposes of the History Honor Society,
To which I have been selected.
to which I have been selected.
I will be true to the principles for which it stands.
I will be true to the principles for which it stands.
I will be loyal to my school.
I will be loyal to my school.
And I will maintain and encourage the high standards of scholarship. And I will maintain
And I will maintain
and encourage
and encourage
the high standards
the high standards
of scholarship,
of scholarship,
leadership,
leadership,
citizenship,
citizenship,
and service.
and service.
All right, you put your right hand down. Next we have the certificate reading. You guys get all your papers. You can take a seat.
Okay, the first person, Emmanuel Efren. Basra Bishar. Angelina Benedicti Flores. Mazna Bilal. Kaylin Bird. Jonathan Butler. Colin Clark. Troy Clark. Ellie Donovan. Ese-Etame Ese. Arnold Garcia. Amanda Gonzalez. Grayson Jarvis. Justin Jarvis. Pranita Joshi. Alyssa Casabon. Hakim Lalu. Mohammed Malik. Alexandra Chisco. Pearl Saho. Marcella Segovia. Faizan Tari. Fiza Tari.
Beneza Yanu. And that's all for me.
All right, now for the fun part, talking about NHD. It's still surprising to me how many different classes are offered at Mount Vernon. One of my friends is taking a child development class, and I don't really know